It was a cop. A young guy. I knew him. Name was Frankie something. Went to high school with me. I straightened up and said, "What can I do for you, officer?" I saw his eyes go right to my torso, where I was holding a red wad of paper towels over a freely bleeding wound, and then back to my face, where one eye was swollen shut under a ragged eyelid caked with dried blood. He had a hand resting on the butt of his gun, alert in that way that cops are. He began with, "Who else is in the house, sir?" "It's fine. I mean, nobody. I live here alone. I mean, my girlfriend lives here with me, but she's away at school right now, so it's just me. Everything's fine. I just had a problem with, something that, came into the house. Some kind of, animal." "You mind if I come in, sir?" There was no right answer to that, since he clearly thought I had a butchered prostitute in here somewhere. I stepped aside without a word. That "sir" shit was irritating me. He was my age. I went to parties with this guy in school. Watched him play teabag twister with underwear on his head. Burgess, I thought. That's his name. Frankie Burgess. He walked past me, and I said, "I'd turn on a light, but the power's out. Must have, blown a fuse or something." He gave me a look that suggested what I just said gave him a whole new perspective on my mental state. I could read his face perfectly because the living room light was on. "Oh, right," I stumbled. "Guess it's back on now." I blinked. Had it been on this whole time? The place was a mess. I mean, it had been a mess before. The blood I dripped on the carpet actually blended with a nearby coffee stain, but where we were standing gave us a clear view into the kitchen, where drawers were flung open. A roll of paper towels had fallen onto the floor, and a pile of plastic lids had spilled out of a cabinet. A couple of steps after that, and he would have a view of the main bedroom, where it looked like a bomb had gone off. Oh, and there was an alien spider monster trapped under an overturned laundry basket with a piece of furniture piled on top of it. The cop moved into the kitchen, and I followed him. I heard a skittering noise from the bedroom and saw the spider trying desperately to escape between the plastic bars of his laundry basket prison. The cop gave no notice. He looked at the bloody box cutter on the counter, then glanced back at me and my several bloody wounds. I stepped casually backward, stopping in front of the bedroom door, leaning against the doorframe as if I wasn't somehow trying to block the view of the room with my body. "Yeah, that," I said, nodding toward the little knife. "I cut myself a few times. No big deal. I was trying to get this thing off me. I think it was a possum or something. I couldn't get a look at it. It was clawing me up pretty bad." He was looking past me, into the bedroom, and said, "Can you step aside, sir?" Screw it. Let this thing bite his eyes out. What do I care? "Go right in, Frankie." I stepped aside, and Frankie the cop entered the bedroom. He surveyed the carnage, then finally looked down on the overturned basket. 5 little armored legs writhed around between the plastic slats. The cop casually looked away, glancing into my closet with disinterest. Finally, he looked back at me. "So, did you kill it or what?" The beast was right there in the basket, in full view, jaws clicking against the plastic, a sound like a dog gnawing on a bone. It had gotten a few legs entirely through the basket and was now pulling its body through. All of this went entirely unnoticed by Officer Burgess. He doesn't see it. No, I tried to trap it." The thing had its head out of the basket now. Frankie looked down. Nothing to see. He looked back at me. "Have you had anything to drink tonight, sir?" "Couple of beers earlier." "Have you taken anything else?" "No." "Can you tell me what day it is?" The spider had a third of its body out of the basket. There was a thick piece of armor around its abdomen that was wedged in between the plastic strips. It had 4 legs working on the problem. "Thursday night, I guess it's Friday morning now. November 4th, I think. My name is David Wong. I'm currently standing in my home. I'm not high. The neighbors are worried about you. They heard a lot of noise in here. You try waking up with some animal biting you in your sleep. This isn't the first time we've been out here, is it? I sighed. No. You put some weight on top of that basket there. I told you, I was trying to trap it. No, the basket was you trying to trap it. I'm thinking the weight is on there because you thought you had trapped it. What? No, it was dark. The monster pulled the widest piece of shell through the bars, halfway out. The difficult half. Is it possible you made all those cuts yourself, with that knife in there? What? No, I don't think so. Why do you keep looking down there? I took a step back out of the room. No reason. Do you see something down there, Mr. Wong? I turned my eyes up to the cop. I was sweating again. No. Have we been seeing things tonight? I didn't answer. Because this wouldn't be the first time, would it? No, I'm fine. I focused on not looking down at the basket. The chewing sounds had stopped. I couldn't hold out anymore. I looked down. It was gone. I felt my bowels loosen. I glanced around the room, checked the ceiling. Nowhere. The cop turned and left the room. Why don't you come with me, Mr. Wong, and I'll take you to the emergency room. What? No, I'm fine. The cuts are no big deal. Don't look minor to me. No, it's fine. Put it in your report that I refuse treatment. I'm fine. You got any family that live here in town? No. Nobody? Parents, aunts, uncles? Long story. There a friend we can call? John, I guess. I was glancing everywhere, trying to spot the spider. No idea what I'd do if I did. Well, tell you what. Give him a call, and I'll hang out here until he shows up. Keep you company, in case the animal comes back. I couldn't think of anything that would make this guy leave short of punching him and forcing him to haul me to jail. That hardly seemed like a solution, though. The cop can stay as long as he wants, I thought, as long as he doesn't go to the tool shed. Frankie the cop turned to me at that moment and said, I'm going to have a look around outside. I let the cop go out the back door, but didn't offer to follow him. I guess he wanted to do a walk around of the yard to make sure there wasn't a corpse out there. Let him. As soon as he was out of sight, I moved back through the kitchen, into the living room, and then through to the bedroom. I flipped on the light, checked the ceiling, checked everywhere. No spider. I heard the muffled sound of steps on crackling leaves and saw the cop outside, passing the window with a flashlight. I headed for the bathroom, soaked a washcloth, and cleaned the dried blood off me. I got a Band-Aid on my shoulder and cleaned up the eyelid, flinching with every stinging touch. I went into the bedroom, searching for the monster, even looking in the laundry basket in case the thing had decided to return for some reason. I put on a shirt and tried to push down my hair, thinking I could present a picture of a stable citizen for the cop and make him feel better about leaving, before he asks to see the tool shed. I grabbed my phone from the bed and dialed John one last time. 3 rings and then, hello? John, it's me. What? Who? We got a situation. Can I wait until after work tomorrow? No. There's something in my house. I glanced around for the cop. A creature. It took a chunk out of my leg, and then it went for my eye. Really? You kill it? No, it's hiding somewhere. It's small. How small? Size of a squirrel, built like an insect, a lot of legs, maybe 12. It had a mouth like... I turned and saw the cop standing in the bedroom doorway. I nodded sideways toward the phone and said, This is John. He's on his way. Good. He nodded toward the back door. Do you have a key to that tool shed outside? I pocketed the phone without saying goodbye to John. Oh, no, I've lost the key. I mean, I haven't been out there in months. I got a pair of bolt cutters out of my trunk. Tell you what, let me open that up for you. No, that won't be necessary. I insist. You don't want to be stuck without your lawn implements. You can finally rake all these leaves out here. We stared each other down. Man, this just kept getting better and better. I found myself wishing the spider would jump down and eat this guy. Actually, I think I have a key. Good. Get it. I went into the kitchen and plucked the tool shed key off the nail next to the back door, where it had been in plain view the entire time. Frankie the cop let me lead the way outside to the shed, staying a few steps back so that he could have time to shoot me in case I decided to wheel on him with fists of fury. I held out the key and took a deep breath. I slipped it into the padlock and snapped it open. I pulled the tool shed door slightly ajar and turned to Frankie. What's in here? I collect things. It's a hobby, that's all, and as far as I know, there's nothing illegal here. Though you could say some of it is, imported, I thought. Could you go ahead and step back, sir? He opened the little shed and stabbed the darkness with a flashlight beam. I held my breath. He went right to the floor with the light where a body would be, I guess. There wasn't one there. Not right now. And instead he illuminated the crust of grass on the wheel of my lawnmower. Then he flicked the flashlight beam to the set of metal shelves along the back and side walls. The beam hit a glass jar the size of a can of paint and illuminated the murky liquid inside. Officer Frankie Burgess stared at it, waiting for his eyes to register what he was seeing. Eventually, he would figure out it was a late-term fetus, a head the size of a fist, its eyes closed. It had no arms or legs. Its torso had been replaced by a jointed mechanical apparatus that hooked around to a point like the tail of a seahorse. I manufactured a chuckle and said, I got that off eBay. It's a prop from a movie. The cop glanced at me. I glanced away. He shined his light back onto the shelf. Next to the jar was an ant farm. The tunnels between the panes of glass had been dug neatly to spell out the word help. Next to that was my old Xbox, the cables wrapped around it. He moved the light down a foot to the shelf below. He passed over a stack of old magazines, not noticing that the top one was an old faded issue of Time depicting a swarm of Secret Service agents around a dead Bill Clinton, the words, "Who did it?" blasting across the picture in red. Next to the magazines was a stuffed red Tickle Me Elmo doll, the fur faded with dust. At the moment the light hit it, its sound box crackled to life, and in a cartoony voice it said, "Ha ha ha! 5 3/4 inches erect!" I said, "It's, broken." Frankie the cop inched the beam to the next object, a mason jar containing a twisted, purple tongue suspended in clear liquid. Next to it was a duplicate jar, only with 2 human eyes floating side by side, trailing a tangled tail of nerves and blood vessels. The cop didn't notice that when the beam swept past the jar, the eyes turned to follow it. Next to the jars was an old battery from my truck, matted with smears of black grime. The light made it to the bottom, where it found a red plastic gasoline can sitting on the floor next to an old CRT computer monitor with a screen that had been shattered by a gunshot. Next to it was the one thing I didn't want the cop to see: the box. We heard crunching leaves behind us. "Yo, what's up?" The cop and I turned to see a dark figure with one hand swinging the orange coal of a burning cigarette. John. "Hey, Frankie." "Dave. Sorry I sent you all those pictures of my dick. I hope that's not what caused you to injure your eye." The cop put the flashlight on John, maybe to make sure he wasn't armed. John wore a flannel shirt and a black baseball cap with the word hat on it in all caps. Frankie the cop thanked John for coming over. I was hoping he would back out of the tool shed because each minute he stood there made me more and more nervous. My eye and shoulder were throbbing. The wind shifted, and I picked up the scent of alcohol from John. The cop swung the flashlight beam around and spotlighted the floor of the tool shed again. Light fell on the box. And I mean the box. The olive green box we'd found in the back of that unmarked black truck. It looked like a serious box. It looked like something you'd want to look inside of if your job was to keep people safe. Frankie nodded toward it. "What's in the green box there?" "Don't know." That was sort of true, I guess. John said, "We found it. You can't get it open." That was also true. Frankie couldn't get it open. I said, "You can take it back with you if you want. Put it in a lost and found at the police station." The cop clicked off the flashlight, then asked John if they could go inside and talk. He then gestured toward the tool shed with the flashlight and said to me, "You want to close that up while I have a word here with John?" I said that seemed like a fine idea, and their shoes crunched through the leaves until they reached the light of my back door. I closed the tool shed and clicked the padlock shut, then let out a sigh of relief. The relief lasted approximately 4 seconds, the time it took me to realize John and Frankie the cop were now back inside the house with the murderous alien spider. I hurried back inside and saw John and the cop in my living room having a low conversation out of my hearing. The cop, I guess, was asking John to babysit me and to call if I showed more signs of craziness. I moved closer and barely heard John say, "Been real depressed lately," and wondered what kind of portrait he was painting in there. I scanned the kitchen for the spider, being sure to check the high ground. No sign of it. I closed some of the open drawers and cabinets, tried to straighten the place up. I made it all the way out of the room before I turned and realized that cabinets would be an ideal hiding place for the little bastard. I'd be getting out my cereal tomorrow morning and the fucker would launch itself at me. Could I search through them without drawing Frankie's attention? Better wait. Instead, I checked the bedroom, again under the guise of straightening up. I looked under my blankets and then under the bed. I pushed around the clothes in my closet. I checked behind the door. No spider. When I came out, I saw John and the cop were on the front porch. Progress. John was thanking the man for coming out, saying he hoped Frankie would remember me in his prayers because I could really use it right now because my life was really a mess and I was just a complete pathetic loser, struggling with my weight and financial problems and alcohol and erectile dysfunction. I decided to join them before John could defame me further. The cop was already walking back toward his patrol car as John said, "And his girlfriend is away and she's only got one hand. She lost it in an accident. You can imagine the problems that causes." Frankie was desperately trying to escape the conversation, talking into the little radio mounted on the shoulder of his uniform, letting headquarters know that everything was under control here. John and I watched him go. Then we heard a skittering by our feet and saw the goddamn spider run past our shoes. It vanished into the darkness, heading right toward the cop. I jumped off the porch, waving my hands. "Wait, Frankie! Officer Burgess, wait!" The cop stopped just short of the squad car and turned to me. I opened my mouth, but the words retreated back into my throat. A bundle of thin black legs appeared over Frankie's left shoulder, touching his bare neck, and he couldn't feel a thing. From behind me, John said, Frankie, don't move, man! You got something on you!" Frankie put his hand on the butt of his gun again, looking alertly between me and John as if his crazy person troubles had just multiplied. The monster crawled over Frankie's shoulder and put legs on his cheek. John screamed, "Frankie, do this!" John made a brushing motion on his own cheek, as if waving away a fly. "Seriously, you got something on your face!" Frankie, oblivious to his situation, did not follow these instructions. He started to say something about us not moving any closer. I lunged, throwing my hands toward the little monster. I never made it. Frankie did something to me that dropped me to my knees, gasping for air. It was some kind of chop to the throat, and man, it worked. I looked up, and for the second time tried to warn Frankie, and for the second time I was unable to. The spider crawled around to Frankie's chest, and then in a blur, burrowed into his mouth. Frankie flailed backward and flung himself to the ground, his head thunking against the squad car's door on the way down. Frankie clawed at his mouth with his hands, gasping, choking, spasming. I backed away, crawling backward on my ass through the leaves. As I retreated, John advanced, saying, "Frankie! Frankie, hey!" Frankie wasn't responsive. His arms were locked in front of him, fingers curled like he was being electrocuted. John spun on me and said, "We gotta get him to the hospital." I sat there in the grass, frozen, wishing I could just go back inside and crawl under the covers again. John threw open both back doors of the cop car. He dug his hands under Frankie's shoulders. "Dave, help me!" I got to my feet and took Frankie's ankles. We wrestled him into the back seat of the squad car, John backing out through the opposite door. We closed it up and John took the wheel. I slid beside John as he hunted around the console for a switch. He found it, flipped it. A siren pierced the night. He shifted into gear and tore down the street, red and blue flashing off every window in the neighborhood as we raced past. We blew through an intersection. I pulled on my seatbelt and braced my hands against the dash. "That thing came into my house, John. It came into my house. I know. I woke up and that thing was biting me. In my bed, John." We turned the corner, rounding a closed restaurant with "For Sale" painted on the windows in white shoe polish. We passed the blackened shell of a hardware store that had burned down last year. We passed a trailer park and a used car dealership and a 24-hour adult bookstore and a skanky motel that never had any vacancies because lots of poor people lived there full-time. "It was in my house, John. Do you get what I'm saying here? Frankie couldn't even see it. It was on his face and he couldn't see it. It was in my house!" I felt my body push against the armrest on the door. Tires squealed. John was taking a corner, car chase style. 2 blocks up was the concrete parking garage for the hospital, the lit windows of the hospital itself looming up behind it. I peered back through the wire screen separating us from Frankie, who was laying motionless across the back seat, eyes open. His chest was heaving, so at least he wasn't dead. "Almost there, man. Hold on, okay?" I turned to John. "It crawled in his mouth. Did you see it?" "I saw it." "Are they going to be able to help him? You really think the doctors can do something?" We squealed into the parking lot and followed a sign that said "Emergency." We skidded to a stop in a covered drive-up to the emergency room. We threw open the back door and dragged out Frankie, then clumsily lugged him toward a set of glass doors that slid open for us automatically. Before we got 5 feet inside, a couple of orderlies came and started barking questions at us that we had no answers to. Somebody rolled up a gurney. John started talking, telling the guys that the cop had had some kind of a seizure, that he had something in his throat, definitely to check his throat. There was a flicker of red and blue lights out of the corner of my eye. A second cop car turning in fast across the parking lot. They probably saw John and me tearing ass through town and followed us here. The orderlies were rolling away Frankie, and a third guy showed up, a doctor, I guess, taking his vitals. I turned to John to tell him about the second cop car, but he had already spotted it. I followed him back out to the sidewalk. "Think we should hang around?" he asked. "I don't think so. I'm already on probation." "Dave, they're gonna come get us. They'll want to know what happened." "No, I don't think this thing's gonna be a big deal. Probably send us a nice card for getting Frankie to the hospital. Come on." We took off walking, since it didn't seem wise to go back home in the stolen cop car. We went around the edge of the lot as the approaching police car whooshed past us. It skidded to a stop next to Frankie's vehicle, and 2 cops spilled out and went inside. We silently cut across the lawn and crossed a street with a traffic light blinking yellow. We cut through the darkened parking lot of a Chinese restaurant called Panda Buffet, which did not in fact serve panda meat as far as we knew. Behind it was one of the city's many abandoned properties, the depressing twin buildings of an old tuberculosis asylum that had been closed since the 60s, the gray bricks tinged moss green. John lit a cigarette and asked, "So what do you think that thing was?" I didn't answer. I found myself scanning the dark plane of each parking lot we passed, studying the shadows, looking for movement. I noticed my steps were hurrying me unconsciously toward the pool of light under the next street lamp. We passed into the parking lot of a tire place with a 10-foot-tall tire mascot standing by the street. The mascot was made of real tires, with mufflers for arms and a chrome wheel for a head. Some joker had used white spray paint to draw a penis on the front of it in the anatomically appropriate spot. John said, "So that thing crawled into his mouth. What do you think it was doing?" "How should I know?" A blur of red and blue zipped by. Another cop car, lights flashing. 30 seconds later, another one. John said, "Man, these guys really gather around one of their own, don't they?" We walked on, hesitant, a sick feeling in my gut. 2 more cop cars flew by. One had different markings. State cop, I guess. They're just going there to check up on him, right? John? I don't know, man. Let's get home. We'll see if they got anything about it on TV. But he had stopped, saying, "No point. All you get is the news after it gets filtered for the reporters. We'll get better information if we go back down there. We'd just be in the—" I stopped at the sound of a distant scream. John said, "You hear that?" "No." Another cop car zipped past. How many of those did we have in this town? "Come on, Dave." John took off walking back the way we came. I stood my ground. I didn't want to go back there, but, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, I also didn't want to walk back to my place alone in the dark. I raised a hand to touch the spot on my eye where I had been bitten, raw flesh under a Band-Aid. I winced as the pain in my shoulder stopped me before I could get my hand up there. The chunk taken out of my skin there was getting sorer by the minute. I was about to tell John to have fun without me when pop, pop, pop. The sound of distant gunshots, like firecrackers. John started jogging back across the tire store parking lot, toward the hospital. I let out a breath, then followed. 27 hours prior to outbreak. We arrived on the hospital grounds to see that all hell had broken loose. 6 cop cars were parked haphazardly around the emergency room entrance, lighting up the parking lot like a dance floor. There was an ambulance, its rear doors open. People were spilling out of the hospital entrance, their heads down like they were running the trenches in a war zone. One lady came out in aqua blue scrubs, one side of her blonde hair matted down with blood. There was a clump of onlookers on the far side of the lawn that included 3 or 4 wheelchairs, maybe 50 yards from the hospital. It looked like they were gathering patients there, getting them away from the building. One cop was talking to them and gesturing with his hand, karate chopping the air with each barked command. His other hand held a pistol pointed at the sky. Pop! Pop! Pop, pop, pop! More shots from inside. John, possessing a genetic defect that makes him walk toward danger, strode down toward where it looked like some cops were trying to set up a perimeter around the chaos. Somewhere, Charles Darwin nodded and smiled a knowing smile. We came upon 2 cops blocking the sidewalk, a fat black one with glasses and an older guy whose face was all mustache. John stepped off the sidewalk as if to walk right past them on the grass. Black cop put out a hand and told us to stop in a tone that suggested if we didn't, he would taser us until our blood boiled. We backed off, stepping aside as paramedics hustled the bleeding head lady past us. She was crying, holding her head, saying over and over again, "He wouldn't die! He just wouldn't die! They shot him over and over again, and he—" John tapped my shoulder and pointed. A boxy truck was pulling up, blue with white letters on the side. I thought it was some kind of paddy wagon, but when the doors opened, a SWAT team spilled out. Holy shit. John moved off the sidewalk and up onto the lawn in front of the building. There were some benches there, and a 10-foot-tall bronze statue of a lady in old-timey nurse's garb holding a lantern. Florence Nightingale? I followed John, and we joined a small crowd of onlookers. Gunshots. Rapid shots, dozens of them. Gasps from the audience. I could barely see down there, but I could make out people running out of the building, frantic. One lady fell down and got accidentally kicked hard in the face. Then a man came out, supported on the shoulders of 2 hospital staff, his right leg missing from the knee down. Or at least, that's what it looked like. Keep in mind we were still far enough away that the door looked about the size of a postage stamp, and I was trying to look through a growing crowd in front of me. That's why I can't be totally sure about what happened next. First, a man in a black SWAT outfit came running out of the building, screaming something. I couldn't hear him from where we were standing, but to this day, John insists the man was screaming, "Run away!" Then shots. Loud, sharp, close. Next came the screams. Screams from every single human being close enough to the lobby to see what was going on. 3 cops near the entrance ducked behind the parked patrol cars and trained their guns on the sliding doors. A man lumbered out. Every gun barrel followed him. It was Officer Frankie Burgess. He was wearing his cop uniform, pants, and a red shirt. No, that's not right. It was a white undershirt, stained with blood over 80% of its area. People crowded around, blocking my view. John craned his neck and said, "It's Frankie! Everybody's got their guns on him, like he's dangerous. Did he shoot all those people? Hey, move, buddy, I can't see!" Frustrated, John went to the nurse statue and, to my horror, climbed it. He got up to where both hands were on her shoulders, his shoes planted on her forearms. Florence's face was planted in John's crotch. I waved at him. "John, get down from there!" "I can see him. It looks like they're talking to him. I don't see a gun. Oh, shit! Look at his arm! Dave, his right arm is broken. And I mean, it's almost broken at a right angle, and Frankie doesn't even act like he cares. Oh, wait. Something's going on." A cop voice from nearby said, "Get down from there! You! Get down!" John ignored him. A burst of gunfire. Everybody ducked. "They're shooting him!" shouted John. "They're shooting a lot! You can see bits of him flying up! Oh, he's still up! Holy shit, Holy shit! He just grabbed one of the SWAT guys! He grabbed him by the ankles and is swinging him around like a baseball bat! He's knocking the other guys down!" "Bullshit! John, get down from there! He's biting a guy now! Oh, he's eating him! A cop! He's got him by the neck! What?" More shots. Screams. Suddenly, I was awash in a panicked current of swinging elbows and shoulders. John jumped down from the statue and ran with the crowd as fast as he could. Over his shoulder, he yelled, "Dave, he's coming!" I took 2 steps, and somebody slammed into me. My face bounced off wet grass. I climbed to my knees in the stampede. A woman nearby screamed at the top of her lungs. I spun, and between running figures saw a shirt stained red with blood. Frankie. Standing right there, left arm jutting grotesquely just under the elbow, blood dripping to the grass from a protruding shard of bone. Police were shouting in the distance, commanding us to get down. How did he beat them here? He cleared half a football field in 5 seconds. Frankie's torso was riddled with puckered bullet wounds, leaking red. His chest heaved with excited breaths, his punctured lungs whistling with each inhale. The broken arm was moving, twitching, the bones tearing free of skin and curling like tentacles. What the shit? Cops ran into position. I saw one SWAT guy fumbling to cram a new magazine into the little submachine gun he had. They shouted orders at each other and at the crowd. Frankie opened his mouth, opening wide like a yawn, and just for a second, I thought I saw the face of the spider, nesting there behind his teeth, filling the cavity with its black body. Then, the Frankie monster let out a noise like I had never heard before. It was a shriek like microphone feedback, but more organic and pained, like the sound a whale would make if it were on fire. The ground shook from it. My bowels quivered. I think I shat a little. I saw people hitting the ground all around me, saw guns fall from the hands of cops. I clapped my palms over my ears as the pained shriek of Frankie the monster filled my bones. Frankie's back arched. His mouth opened to the sky, howling. Blood was spurting from a dozen bullet holes. It was the last thing I saw before the world swam away and went black. I came to and sat up. People were standing around, nobody running. No sign of Frankie. Some time had passed. The horizon was shitting a sun, casting a glow on a layer of fog that was settling in the low areas like puddles of ghost piss. I saw John about 10 feet away, on his feet but bent over at the waist, gripping his pants at the knees. He was blinking, as if trying to focus his eyes. "John, you all right?" He nodded, still looking at the ground. "Yeah. I'm thinking that sound he made melted our brains. Oh, did they get him?" "Dunno. I just came to." A white truck pulled up with a dish apparatus on the back. It had a TV station logo on the side. We were about to be on live TV. I tried to fix my hair with my hands. Hospital staff in aqua scrubs were walking people back into the building. It looked like every policeman in the state was here, taking statements from people. I realized John and I should probably get going before we got asked a bunch of questions that, once again, we didn't have any non-crazy answers for. Not just about tonight, but everything. I turned toward John, but John wasn't there anymore. I went looking for him, giving one pair of cops a wide berth along the way. I thought about just going home without him, but then I saw him standing out by the street and talking to a goddamned reporter. I stomped over there, walked right in front of the camera, and was about to grab him by the collar and drag him away when John said, "Oh, shit!" I followed John's gaze and said, "Oh, shit!" The reporter lowered her microphone and said, "Oh, shit!" Army guys. A lot of them. National Guard, I guessed. They were wearing that grayish urban camo they wear these days. They had parked a green truck across the intersection where the hospital driveway met the road. Cars were lined up trying to get out, and soldiers were going down the line and issuing instructions to angry drivers. Up by the truck, a soldier raised a bullhorn and said, "Attention! Do not leave the area. There is a significant chance you have been exposed to a contagious pathogen. Leaving the area could lead to spreading the infection to your family and friends. By order of the Centers for Disease Control, you are not to leave the area. Please go back to the lobby of the hospital where you will be given further instructions. This is for your own safety. We apologize for the inconvenience, and you will be released as soon as it is determined that you do not pose an infection risk to those around you. Thank you for your cooperation. If you attempt to leave the area, you will be prosecuted. Do not attempt to leave the area." John tossed down his cigarette, stamped it out, and said, "Let's leave the area." "Yeah." We left the reporter behind and circled around, looking for a way out. We found the ambulance-only entrance around the block had a Humvee across it. The soldiers were forming a perimeter, camouflaged dots looping around the grounds. We looked around behind the building, where there was a little strip of woods separating the hospital grounds from town. Same scene, with the addition of some guys unloading spools of razor wire from the back of a truck. John spat and said, "This might sound like an odd thing to say right at this moment, but I wish those guys were wearing hazmat suits. Yeah, or at least something covering their mouths. There wouldn't happen to be a door around here, would there?" "A door? You know, one of the..." There's not one in the hospital as far as I know. That would have been awfully convenient, though." John thought for a moment, then said, "What about Beebe's? It's right on the other side of the trees there." Beebe's was a convenience store about 2 blocks away, but on the other side of that little wooded area. Among those trees was a deep drainage ditch we'd also have to cross. Man, I don't know. He edged around to get a look at the guardsman standing between us and the woods. He said, "Come on. We wait till that guy goes to help unload some more of that wire, then run right through the gap there. But if we're going to do it, we have to do it now, before the sun comes all the way up. And what makes you think those other guys won't shoot us in the head?" "They're not going to do that. All these guys know is they got up in the wee hours of the morning to fence off a hospital because a guy went on a shooting rampage, and they're afraid some diseases may have escaped. They don't know there's a, monster situation going on. And you know all of that how? T.J. Fry is over on the other side. You remember T.J.? Came to that party a few years ago and stuck his dick in the jelly. He's like a sergeant now. Said they haven't been told shit. Well, they're gonna chase us. Yeah, but we just gotta make it to BB's. John stripped off his shirt and started wrapping it around his face, like he was ready to join some riot in the Middle East. Cover your face unless you want them to identify you and show up at your house in an hour. Peering through a quarter-inch slit of wrapped t-shirt, we crouched low and stayed in the shadows until we reached the narrow stretch of lawn between us and the woods. We stayed like that for about 15 minutes until one guard left his post to accept a cup of coffee from another. We sprinted. I immediately slipped in the wet grass and fell on my face. My shirt mask slipped over my eyes. I scrambled to my feet and just ran as hard and fast as I could, nearly blind. I heard shouted commands, but no gunshots. A branch slapped me in the face, and I knew I had reached the woods. I stumbled and clawed the shirt away from my eyes, just in time to feel the ground give way under me. I was sliding down an embankment of wet grass and dead leaves, then splashed into freezing ankle-deep water. It was dark. There had been an early morning gloom out on the lawn, but it was still midnight under the trees. No sign of John or anyone else. I sloshed through the water and scrambled up the other side, pulling myself up with handfuls of weeds, knocking aside discarded grocery bags and flattened plastic Coke bottles. A hand latched around my ankle. A different hand latched around my wrist. John up top, one of the soldiers on bottom. For a ridiculous moment, I was pulled in opposite directions like a cartoon character, both men shouting frantic instructions at me. I tried to kick free and accidentally kicked the guy in the head in the process. It worked. In 3 seconds, John and I were out of the woods and sprinting diagonally across a parking lot, through the bay of a car wash, down an alley, and toward the gray bricks and rusting dumpster that was the ass end of BB's convenience store. I risked a look over my shoulder. Shit! There were no fewer than 10 soldiers following us now, the two in the lead carrying black plastic pistols with neon green tips. They looked like toys, but I knew they were tasers. I was eager to avoid my 5th lifetime tasering, if at all possible. The restroom door was on the exterior of the store, around the corner to our left. I rushed up to it, grabbed a rickety knob and... Locked! I said, trying to catch my breath. The key! Inside! You have to get the key from the counter inside! John shoved me aside, reared back, and kicked the door. The whole knob and latch mechanism exploded. We crammed ourselves inside, pushing the broken door closed. 1, 2, 3... Hey, you two! Get the fuck out of there and lay the fuck down on the pavement before we have to... The soldier was cut off in mid-word. I pulled open the door to find we were surrounded by panties. We stepped out of the ladies' dressing room at the Walmart on the opposite side of town. John and I had traveled about 2.5 miles in approximately 0 seconds. Right now, at BB's, several very confused National Guardsmen were staring at an extremely filthy and completely empty public bathroom. We stepped into the aisle of the nearly empty store. 2 muddy men with T-shirts wrapped around their heads. John unwrapped his and said, "What is this, Walmart?" So, I wasn't completely honest with the psychiatrist about the whole thing with the mysterious door in the burrito stand and the Asian dude who disappeared into it. John and I have identified 6 of those doors around town, and we know where they lead. To each other. The only thing is, you never knew to which of the other doors they were going to take you. It was basically doorway roulette. I mean, you're not going to step out in Beijing or anything. It's always another door around town. All the ones we've found, anyway. But they never seem to go to the same place twice. Why? Because this whole town is fucked up, that's why. I keep trying to tell you that. You don't want to come here. It's exhausting. John and I didn't draw much attention as we moved through the store, since at this particular store in this particular town, we weren't even the filthiest people there. We just walked right out the front door and headed back toward town along the shoulder of the highway. It was a wet, chilled morning under a lethargic November sky that had rolled out of bed and thrown on an old, gray, grease-stained t-shirt. John said, "Did you hear? They never found Frankie." "Wonderful. What do you think happened? You think that bug thing took over his brain?" "Hey, why not? You think he's going to turn up again?" If you're asking yourself why the men with guns chasing us couldn't just use the magic door and follow us right to Walmart, it's because for most people, the doors are just doors. Same as for most people, the spider monster in my house would have been invisible, just as it was for Frankie. Same as how, if you'd been in the bathroom with me all those months ago when I saw that shadowy shape outside my shower, you'd have seen nothing. You might have sensed something, just as in your everyday life you might sit in a dark house and feel like you're not alone, or have a nagging suspicion that something slipped around a corner just a moment before you looked. The feeling can usually be expressed by the phrase, "Of course there's nothing there." Now. To be clear, if you've actually seen a ghost, that doesn't make you like us. A ghost sighting is usually nothing more than your brain trying to put a familiar face on something that does not have a face at all. John and I, on the other hand, can see what most of you can only sense. We're not special, it's just the result of some drugs we took. Just for future reference, if you're ever at a party and a Rastafarian offers you a syringe full of a slimy black substance that crawls around on its own like the Blob, don't take it. And don't call us either. We get enough bullshit from strangers as it is. 25 hours prior to outbreak. English should have a word for that feeling you get when you first wake up in a strange room and have no freaking idea where you are. Hotezelment? I was cold, and every inch of my body was in pain. I heard a crunching, like the jaws of a predator grinding through bone. I pulled open my eyes. I saw a dragon standing proudly atop a hill before me. The dragon was on a TV screen. Beneath it was a video game console with a tangle of cords snaking across green carpet. I blinked, squinted at the sun burning in through a cracked window. I turned, hearing my neck creak as I did, and saw John sitting at a computer desk in the corner, staring into the monitor and holding a bottle full of a clear liquid that I'm sure you wouldn't want to try to put out a fire with. I sat up, realizing I'd been covered up with something in my sleep. I thought for a moment John had thrown a blanket over me, but closer inspection revealed it to be a beach towel. John glanced back at me from his computer chair and said, "Sorry, I used my spare blanket when I got that leak in my car." I looked around for the source of that animal crunching noise. I found Molly laying behind the couch, with her head crammed inside an open box of Cap'n Crunch cereal. She was eating as fast as she could, trying to use her paws to keep the box in place. "You're letting her do that?" "Oh, yeah. Cereal is stale anyway. I don't have any dog food here." The dragon sat frozen on the television, the intro screen for a video game John had apparently been playing while I slept on his couch. "What time is it?" "Around 8. I stood and felt my head swim. I rubbed my eyes and almost screamed in pain from the wound there. My shoulder felt like it had taken a bullet, and it seemed like a pair of elves were trying to escape my skull through my temples using tiny pickaxes. It wasn't the first time I had woken up at John's place feeling like this. My phone screamed. The display read, "Amy." I closed my eyes, sighed, and answered. "Hey, baby." "Hi, David, I'm watching the news. What happened?" "Shouldn't you be in class?" Amy had failed a pretty basic English class last semester because it was a morning class and she kept sleeping through it. She said, "They canceled it. Oh, it's on again. Turn to CNN." I talked around the phone to John, told him to switch over the TV. He did, and watched as an early morning shot of the chaos at the hospital filled the screen. The name of the city was displayed along the bottom, national news. John turned up the sound, and we heard a female reporter say, "No history of drug use or mental illness. Frank Burgess had been with the department for 3 years. Authorities are combing the area for Burgess, but police say the number of wounds he sustained in the standoff make his turning up alive, quote, highly unlikely. Meanwhile, the hospital remains under quarantine due to unspecified infection risks that have only added to the anxiety in this shell-shocked community." They cut to a shot of our enormously fat chief of police, giving a soundbite in front of a bank of microphones. To Amy, I said, "Man, our chief of police is getting huge." Amy said, "They said 13 people were hurt, and I think 3 people died, but there could be more. Did you guys hear about this last night, when it was all going on?" A pause on my end. Too long. Finally, I said, "We heard about it, yeah." Uh-oh. What? "David, were you there? Were you guys in on this?" "What? No, of course not. Why would you think that?" "David." No, it was nothing. Guy just went crazy, that's all." "Are you lying?" No. She said nothing. She and the therapist knew the same trick. Filling the silence, I said, "I mean, we were there, but we weren't really involved." "I knew it. I'm coming down." "No, Amy, it's nothing, really. It's over. We just happened to be in the area." I heard John say, "Hey, it's me!" I turned to the television. Sure enough, John's face filled the screen. The reporter's voiceover covered the audio, saying, "But for every hour Burgess remains at large, fear and paranoia are bound to keep growing in this small city." On TV, John's voice faded in. "And then we saw a small creature crawl into his mouth. I wasn't 2 feet away. I saw it clearly. The thing wasn't from this world. I don't mean alien. I mean probably interdimensional in nature. I think it's obvious from what happened tonight that this being possessed some powers of mind control." I closed my eyes again and groaned. Amy said, "I'm coming down. I'll take the bus." "Forget it. Your classes are more important. If you fail English again, I think they can kick you out of the country. I think it's in the Patriot Act." "Gotta go, honey. I'm late for class." "You said you didn't—" "We'll talk about it later. Bye-bye." I killed the phone and looked for my shoes. "You going back home?" "I can't stay here, John." "Yeah, but, you had that thing in your house." "You think there's another one?" "I don't know, but what do you want me to do? Have the place sprayed?" "No, I'm just saying. That thing, it crawled inside Frankie and seemed to take him over. Well, that thing turned up in your bed. Are you assuming that's an accident? Because maybe we should consider that it was there for you." I can always trust John to think of things like this. "It don't matter, okay? Your couch isn't long enough. It kills my neck on the armrest, so it's moot." "Well, you're not getting the bed." I took away Molly's cereal box, which was now just empty cardboard bent in the shape of a dog head. I said, "You sounded crazy on the news, by the way. I hope you know that." "What? I was telling the truth." "To what purpose exactly? The only people who'll be convinced by that are people who are already nuts. I can see you've got your blog up right now. For what? So you can tell the whole nonsense story and be one more nut job ranting on the internet? It doesn't do anybody any good. It just makes you look crazy. It makes both of us look crazy. Hey, aren't you going to be late for your court-mandated therapist appointment? Fuck you." I glanced at my watch. He was right. The drive through town was surreal. I had to go past the hospital. Okay, I didn't have to, but curiosity got the better of me, and it had the air of a natural disaster. News vans were parked outside of barriers that were blocking the street. Cops were at a checkpoint, directing traffic away from the parking garage entrance. 3 blocks later, I had to wait at an intersection for 5 minutes while a row of green trucks rumbled past. Military. I suddenly wanted to get far away from there. I had half hoped I would find the psychiatrist's office closed today, as if the aftermath of a shooting rampage would be treated like a national holiday. No such luck. People gotta make a paycheck, I guess. I barged in before I realized there was somebody else in the waiting room. Should have looked in through the window or something. I would have waited outside if I'd known, since the potential for really awkward conversation seems pretty high in the waiting room of a psychiatrist's office. I tried to think of a plausible excuse for turning around and leaving. The best I came up with was to grab the potted plant in the corner and just walk out as if it was a rental I was repossessing. I decided not to. The lady in the waiting room didn't even turn to me when I came in. She was transfixed by a television in the corner tuned to Fox News, covering the shooting. Jesus, slow news day. People get shot all the time, right? I found a chair as far away from her as possible. I grabbed a magazine and held it in front of my face. Seemed to be a lot of articles about wedding dresses. "It's happening all over, you know," said the woman from the other side of the room. She was probably 45 or so, hair a desperate shade of blonde. I said, "What's that?" "Demon possession. All over the world. You see news from the Middle East and such, and you can see it spreading like wildfire." "Uh-huh. It's easier now that all the souls are gone." I flipped the page in my bridal magazine, acting engrossed in the ads. The only thing worse than always being the craziest person in the room is when suddenly you're alone with someone crazier. She was still talking. "Did you know the rapture happened already? In 1961. The Lord called all the souls up to heaven, but the bodies were left behind. That's why the people walking around today don't seem to have souls. It's because they don't. You see that story last week? The man who was being chased by the police in a stolen car? There was a newborn baby in the back seat. He just threw it out the window. A baby! People these days are just common animals because their human souls are gone, see?" I lowered the magazine and said, "That's not a bad theory, actually." "They called it the mark of the beast, but they don't need a mark. They revealed themselves as beasts. With time." The door to the office creaked open, and out walked a gorgeous teenage girl. For a baffled second, I thought this was somehow my therapist, like maybe she was filling in today. But of course she was just a patient, and Dr. Tennant was behind her. The crazy woman in the waiting room stood and thanked the doctor, and walked out with the girl. The lady hadn't been there for treatment. She was just giving her daughter a ride. Right off, Dr. Tennant asked, "What happened to your eye?" "Got in a fight with John. He said counseling was a waste of time, and I told him I'd be damned if I'd hear him insult you and your profession." "You look like you haven't slept." "How can I? With what's going on? Have you been watching the news today? Do you know if they found Frankie?" "He wasn't expected to live, was he? Did you know him?" "What? No. Why would I have known him?" "You called him Frankie." "Well, I went to high school with him, but that was years ago. I didn't have anything to do with what happened, if that's what you mean." "Not at all. Because I didn't. I'm sorry if I made you feel accused." I glanced out the window at the exact moment a green truck rumbled by on the street outside. Why are there so many army trucks? This all seems like an overreaction, don't you think? Not letting me change the subject, Tennant said, "I would like to come back to what you talked about last time, about having to hide your true self from the world, and feeling like you are powerless to become the type of person who would not have to hide. Just now, you seemed to feel I was accusing you. I'd like to talk about that if we can." I stared out the window and chewed a fingernail. Man, I did not want to be here. In this office, in this town, in this life. I wanted to just walk out. I knew at some point the cops were going to scoop up John. He'd appeared on goddamn television right in the area they were trying to quarantine, and that meant eventually they'd come get me, too. What the hell was I doing here? Because you have nowhere else to go. I said, I don't know. 24 hours ago, I'm sitting here trying to justify believing crazy things, and one day later, the whole town has gone crazy. So in my mind, the rest of the world